So I kind of want to transition a little bit and learn a little bit about what you do outside of your job and outside of the office to kind of relax.
That's a really good question. Eat ramen and watch Liang Empire, right? No.
Great show. Don't
love that show.
Hi everyone, my name is Kim Nguyen and I'm here with the Chinatown Project to talk about Lunch Break, our series, which is all about AAPI community leaders who are making an impact not only in their community but beyond. And here I have Liang. Thank you so much for being part of our episode and our series. So we're a little bit outside of our usual stomping grounds of Boston Chinatown. We're about 20 minutes outside in Quincy. Lin is graciously hosting us here. We're excited to eat some great food and have this discussion. For those of you who might not know, I'm Vietnamese American. My parents immigrated from Vietnam a couple of decades ago. And out of curiosity, I'm wondering why you decided to pick Lin as...
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here in this space, and you'll have to be honest with me, let me know what you think about the food. But I have full trust in Tam, and that what he's going to serve for us is going to be absolutely amazing. So it's really important to me. Not only do I know Tam personally and professionally, but I've known him for quite a long time in my personal space through my family. So he grew up with my cousins. I chose this place specifically because he actually has a long history in the restaurant business, and they have a location in Dorchester called Pho Hua. So they operate between Dorchester and Quincy. And I think that's just like the perfect picture of sort of the API experience here in Massachusetts, right? A lot of folks, my family included, came from China, from Vietnam, from the Philippines too. Actually, have a good Filipino population here, settled in Chinatown, right? And worked their way up and moved their way into the suburbs, which back then, right, folks considered Quincy more of the suburbs, right? And I think folks then felt like, well, now I made it. I made it out of the city. I made it into the single family home, right? Sort of that American dream that they're trying to chase. And so a lot of folks were really moving from Chinatown to Quincy, I believe, under those same conditions, And so again, just this restaurant, I feel like, is just the perfect example of that, right? Where they have such rich, deep history in the Dorchester, Boston area, and then they've also expanded out into Quincy.
For sure. Wow, that's great to hear, and I'm interested in hearing a little bit about your family history as well.
Yeah, I will always take an excuse to talk about my family. So my mom's parents, they're the ones that I'm the closest to. So my grandfather came over here first, and then subsequently brought, each family member over one by one. And everyone was packed into this little apartment in Chinatown, right? My mom is one of 5 siblings, and again, they all grew up in, I think it was a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment in Chinatown. And so when they moved here to Quincy, we actually all live within probably 10 minutes of each other, if not 5 minutes, right? There's like a 10-block radius in this North Quincy area where we all grew up. And so we all were always really close with one another. My mom's mom, my grandmother is the one that raised all of us. And I think that's really what set us on the path that we're all on now, my family, right? Being involved in the community and doing what we can to give back, because she always taught us that no matter what you do, no matter where you go, you want to leave a place better than how you found it. This is our home, we all live here, we all grew up here, and we have to take care of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I kind of wanted to delve into that a little deeper about coming back home to the place you grew up and kind of integrating yourself back into the community, because I know that you originally went to school in New York for college, and I think you worked in insurance there and worked maybe like another job there, and then you ended up coming back here and kind of working in the restaurant industry before you got to like where you are now. So I'm curious about your motivations for coming back.
Quincy has changed dramatically in the last 30 years, but when I was growing up here, we didn't have a very large AAPI population. So, you still go through the typical, bringing your lunch to school and kids being all like, what smells? What is that, right? And
everyone has like their lunch, their lunchtime story.
Right, I feel like that's just a thing, right? And now I look back and I'm like, that was the best food I ever had, right? But, it was tough. It was tough growing up here. Folks, I didn't have a lot of AAPI friends, and kids are mean in general, but like kids in particular, with sort of racist remarks cut differently. I think for me, because my family was all so close, physically or geographically, because I just felt so like almost kind of like I was suffocating a little bit, right? It's just, there were so many of us. I love my family to pieces, but I wanted to just get out of here. I also was chasing, I think, a place where I could find more diversity. Maybe I couldn't voice it back then, right? And I couldn't pinpoint exactly what that want was, but I did want to get out of here, you know? And so as soon as I could, for my undergrad, I wanted to hightail it out of here. I went to New York and, you know, was doing my undergrad at Hofstra University. And I remember my freshman year, my sister said to me, she's very pragmatic, right? She's a year older, software developer, brilliant, but very pragmatic. And she said, you know, you can't help other people if you don't help yourself first. And so I really took that to heart. And, you know, this whole notion of, you know, you should be a lawyer or a doctor, right? I wasn't good at either of those things, but I figured lawyer track might be a little bit better. When I was finishing school, it was right at the sort of still the beginning stages of the recession. You know, a lot of people that I knew who were in law school or had become lawyers were just like, there are no jobs out there. You know, don't go into law school and take on all of this debt because it's not going to be worth it. It was a really tough time, right, in 2010. So I ended up moving back here, safe, right? My whole family's here. We had, you know, 5 restaurants here in Quincy at the time, just mom and pop shops too. So when I came back, I started bartending, realized I can't bartend to save my life. You know, it was at that time that the Seaport started developing and Chemist Square was starting to develop. And so some of these large developers were coming to us and saying, you know, do you want to open up, you know, first world retail restaurants? And I think all of us kind of sat down at that point and realized we can't expand the way that we want to if we don't really codify ourselves as a company, right, as an organization. And so myself and 5 of my older guy cousins all sat down and created a company, right, the JP Fuji Group, which is named after my cousin Jimmy and Peter, who were the ones that started the company way back when. And so, you know, we sat down and figured out, okay, well, company needs a CEO, needs a CFO, COO, all of that. And so we all had our sort of assigned roles. And I came in as the sort of assistant, catch-all, you know, get the coffee, drive you around, whatever you need, just to absorb and learn as much as I could. So I was doing that for 5 years with them. But even before then, I had the opportunity to really get to know the community well because my cousin Jimmy that opened the restaurant with his friend was, you know, he had ran for office a couple of times. And so growing up, we were always really involved in the community, right? Volunteering for different things. We got to utilize the restaurant in spaces like nonprofits by donating items or showing up and, you know, giving out food. And I loved that aspect of it, right? And that goes back to, again, how we were all raised, right? My grandmother, again, drilling it into us that we have to somehow make this place better than we left it.
The food's here.
It smells so good.
I am loving that there's like steam coming off of it because it's just a really great feeling when you just have a hot steaming bowl of soup just put down right in front of you. But I think you have the pho beef thing.
Did you eat these dishes growing up?
I did, yeah. So my mom, so we would order from this pho place, and they would package everything like kind of separately. Mm-hmm. So kind of just to like break down like, I guess like your pho, usually it would be like broth that's been made for a couple hours. There's beef and tripe, and different just kinds of like really good different kinds of like cuts of meat in there. Usually, I will say, for a lot of my Vietnamese cuisine, I love rice dishes, and pho is kind of one of those meals that I eat like once in a while, like with family. But every time, I will never say no if someone puts like a bowl of food down like in front of me, like you said. And I have bún bò Huế in front of me, which is another kind of Vietnamese soup as well. And we've got, I can see like the fatty like cuts of meat, and this one looks nice and spicy. I think the best part of any kind of Vietnamese soup that is brought to you at the table are kind of like the different veggies like on the side. And you know, we've got our spicy peppers, we've got our chili. You can't not have soup without a little lime. Bean sprouts are my absolute favorite. So Nina, I just wanted to ask you, you're the first Chinese American counselor for Quincy, which I think is an awesome, remarkable feat. And I kind of wanted to learn about your career path to get to that point, and what was your motivation for running for office?
Yeah, so running for office, I, believe it or not, had no idea what that actually meant when I first ran. So as I had mentioned earlier, I was working with my family for quite a while, and running the restaurants was amazing, right? Being able to be involved in the community was great. And one of the things that got really frustrating though was they were starting to redevelop our downtown here in Quincy, and they weren't engaging any of the community members. They weren't engaging the business owners, and it became really frustrating when, you know, we'd walk into the restaurant and we didn't know if the water was going to be on or not, right? And so it was, and we were trying to run a business, right? People were coming in, their livelihood depends on this, and so we realized really quickly that, you know, if we are business owners here in this community, our entire family, you know, lives here, we're involved in the community, and we're not being engaged in the conversation, you know, how much more are other people being ignored? So I got really frustrated, and one of the other city councilors at the time came to me and said, you know, if you're so frustrated, you should run for office. And I was like, I don't know what that means, right? So I had no idea what a city councilor was. I didn't know what the role was. And, you know, once he walked me through it and, you know, explained essentially that we have a strong mayor form of government here in Quincy, meaning the mayor is the CEO of the city essentially. And then you have a body of 9 city councilors who are the sort of legislative branch, so almost like Congress, right? You make the laws and you help constituents or the residents with, you know, fixing potholes and cutting down trees and whatnot. But the key to the city council role is that you're representing the community, right?
Which is exactly like what you said you want to do. You want to find a way to actually be able to express your frustration.
Exactly, and that's, I think, what really attracted me to it was that if I could step into that role and represent, you know, the small business community, the API community, particularly when it came to development, that would be amazing. And if I won, great, and if I lost, I could still help the community in other ways. And so luckily I was surrounded by incredible mentors in the business. I got to meet a lot of really amazing people like Michelle Wu, Mayor Michelle Wu now in Boston, love it. Awesome. Somebody said, you know, she's a young Asian woman, you're a young Asian woman, go and be friends. And luckily when we met, she took me under her wing and has since been just an amazing mentor. But, you know, I've learned along the way that the issue with this kind of work is that if those who are elected in office are making decisions for people who they're not engaging with, do you know what I mean? Then I feel as though they're making uneducated decisions, right? So it's important for us in these spaces to make sure that we're always engaging with those who we represent.
Sure. Yeah, and like you had said before, and even I learned a lot just now from you about the structure of like kind of like how that type of like government works. Do you think like your experience of not being in politics like helped you kind of with like your campaign and kind of your experience like being like city councilor?
I think being inexperienced coming into elected office, I still feel inexperienced, right? But it's important, I think, for me because of what drives me in this work, right? I don't want to be somebody that gets so comfortable and so entrenched into politics that then I forget the folks outside of that bubble, right? It's a bubble, right? Like any industry, right? When you sort of get so deep into it, you almost get pigeonholed into it, you know what I'm saying? Right. And so, or tunnel vision, I mean.
For sure.
And then sometimes you miss, you know, what's going on. And so I think inexperience is not a bad thing, right? Because you're coming into a space with your experience outside of it, and change is important, right? And that's how change happens. Never voted before I ran for office. I voted twice in my life at that point, and that was it. And again, I didn't know what a city councilor did, right? So when I came into this space, it was really important to me to engage people who looked like me and make sure that they understood that they have a voice here, that they should be part of the process, and that continues to drive my work.
For sure. And what does that look like for you? Like, are you going door to door? Are you like creating some kind of like social media campaign? Like, I'm really curious. I think for me, when I was running for office, that was in high school. So how I got my name out there was putting up posters and kind of talking to my classmates and seeing like what they needed or like what their issues were, what they wanted solved. So I'm just really curious, like how did you make it known to your community that this is what you're wanting to do and your goal is to help them?
Yeah, so ways to engage are exactly what you did. Exactly that. You put up signs, you talk to them, and you ask them questions, right? But there's a science to this, you know, to how you run for office, and it doesn't matter if you're running for city council or for president, right? Just like you did, you have to get your name out there, right? That's the most important thing. So, you know, when I talk to folks who are sort of like political operatives in the space, right, they explain it in this way where you have 3 things on a campaign. You've got money, you've got time, and you've got people, right? You can always get more money because you fundraise. Right. You can always get more people because you bring in volunteers, right? You cannot get more time. And so your goal is to get more votes than the other person. And the only way you can do that, again, to your experience, is talking to people. The problem is you don't have that much time to talk to a lot of people. So you have to use that time really wisely in who you talk to, right? So the way they explain it to me is, if you're going out and knocking on doors or talking to residents and engaging them in the process, talk to people who are already voting. Talk to people who already know what a city council is, right? Because if I talk to you and say, hey, I'm Liang, I'm running for city council at large, would love to count on your vote on November 1st, right? If you know all of that information already, the only thing I need to talk to you about is why me. So the theory behind that is you don't have time to talk to folks like that. You don't have the time to engage with folks like that, right? And I remember asking, like, okay, that makes sense. Who are those people then that I shouldn't be talking to? And they were like, well, typically young people don't vote, and typically, minority communities. And I was like, so
that's so
you want me to ignore me, right? Essentially.
Yeah, right.
And so part of what I wanted to change in my campaigning was, again, the tactics are the basic tactics of talking to people who vote and getting your name out there. That's important. But I also made it a priority to go around with voter registration forms and knock on doors of people who don't typically vote, engage them in the process, tell them to register. And it took a lot longer to talk to those folks, but I think it's really important that we start somewhere. We'll never forget getting a phone call from somebody who didn't speak the language, right, but spoke Toisanese, and I speak Toisanese, which is a dialect of Chinese, and it was this woman, and she was just like, how do I get this tree cut down, right? I don't know who to go to or who to ask, and I was like, that's my job, right? So I called the department, they came out, they checked the tree, it was dead, and they cut it down, right? It didn't matter what language you spoke, I realized. It's that we all live here in this community and we all have the same problems. It's just, how do you then access the resources for the help that you need? And that's the disconnect that I noticed. So I've made it my goal to really try to find ways to, basically provide support to those departments to engage in those communities. So I worked with a couple of nonprofits. Actually, a lot of them started in Boston, Chinatown. ACDC is one of them, Asian Community Development Corps. They're amazing. BCNC, Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center. I know that you're familiar with the Tao Arts Center. So they have some locations and some work in Quincy. And they came in along with Maiju, who is a Waldom Kung Fu Academy, phenomenal community leader. And they helped to create a language access program. So for the last 2 years, the mayor has funded a language access program, essentially allowing for these departments to have, automatic translation, interpretation services, so that now, if there's another grandma who needs her tree cut down, she can now call that department and to find somebody who speaks her language.
Incredible, yeah. And I actually wanted to kind of talk to you as well and ask you about the work you do mentoring women who are looking to maybe work in government. I know we talked about it in the past, and I think that's a really interesting initiative that you're part of. So I wanted to kind of learn more about, was that something that you co-founded or something that you kind of fell into? Like, how did that come about?
And a little bit of both, right? Like, I think I fell into the Quincy Women's Network because I was surrounded by people who had been incredible mentors to me, and we all wanted to pass that along, right? You never want to hold power to yourself, right? Like, and that goes for any industry. Again, I always go back to Mayor Woon and the story that I have with her, because I honestly believe I wouldn't be as successful as I am today had it not been for her guidance, right? Like, I see somebody who looks like me in the same field, right? Just going gangbusters and doing amazing things. And so learning from her directly and learning from her just watching, it really, I took it to heart, right? And I want to make sure that if I can do that for somebody else in a small way, I want to put it out there as much as I can. So again, a group of us came together and said, there isn't that kind of a network here in Quincy, right? Let's start it and start bringing other business women in and other industries. So one of my friends who started it, Tina Cahill, she is in the education business, right? Another friend of mine, Abby Wynn-Burke, she's in banking. And another friend of mine, Melissa Pond, she works for the city. So we all came together and just said, let's bring all of our different backgrounds in, create this network, and bring other folks in who want to learn.
Do you have any advice for folks that might want to be running for office, or even if not running for office, those who just want to make a change or impact in their community?
Politics, I feel like, to me anyways, it seemed so just like this crazy far out concept, that was inaccessible to somebody like me, somebody who grew up from an immigrant community. Civic engagement and civic education was not a thing. You volunteer in the community, but it seemed different, right? And now that I've been in it for 7 years, I realize that the connection is, it's really important. It impacts your everyday life. In order to have representation and a voice, it takes a community to really step up and get involved, right? And I will say it's not just those who want to run for office, it's also those who are necessarily behind the scenes, right? Those, like you said, who want to just get active and get engaged.
Right.
They're the voices that those people in elected office are listening to.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor talking to you about this, and hopefully it encourages other folks to get out and get involved.
And Nina, where can our followers get in contact with you? How can they follow you and keep up to date on what you're doing in the community?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and both handles are at Nina_Liang. They can go to my website, ninaliang.org, email, cell phone, everything's there. It all comes to my phone. So if folks want to reach out, I encourage them to do so. Even if they don't live in Quincy, if I can connect them with folks who maybe live in their cities or towns, if they need help, I'm more than happy to do so. Thanks for watching.